plaintiff, Elda Villarreal, rented an apartment from the defendant, and she says while living there, the defendant was always disrespectful towards her. Elda claims the defendant would often curse at her when addressing problems with the apartment, and she's suing her today for a rent refund. Defendant Maricela Delgado says only Elda and her daughter were authorized to live in her rental unit. But months after she moved in, the apartment became a revolving door for criminals and parolees. Maricela claims she constantly got complaints from her other tenants about Elda, and she denies owing her because she claims Elda moved without notice.
Start with you.
Your Honor, if this would have happened a few years ago, I'd be in front of you for assault. The way this...
Why a few years ago?
My past, I've had a past. I've been cleaning for 17 years now.
17 years ago, what were you doing?
I was doing drugs.
Okay. What type?
Speed.
Okay. You got over that? Good.
Yes.
Well,
Thank
that's
God.
the major point. Good. Where do you know the defendant from? Were you all associated with each other before you rented from her?
No.
What was it like renting from her?
It was okay because I don't feel like I was a bad tenant, so I didn't have really, didn't much complain with her.
Okay.
But the times I did, she would, like a couple times she would cuss at me, and I would ask her not to talk to me like that because I don't speak to her in that manner. And
What was she curse at you about?
just situations that would happen around the property.
Ma'am, what do you want to tell me?
Your Honor, only Elda and her daughter were authorized to live in the unit. Mm-hmm. Some months later, it became a revolving door for criminals and parolees. I had numerous complaints of hanging out in front of the building, on the side of the building, drinking, allegedly doing drugs. I never seen them do drugs, but my tenants...
How do you know they were associated with her?
Because they were her sons.
That's not true, Your Honor. My sons are never been on parole, and they drink.
Were they hanging
occasionally.
out drinking and getting high around the building?
They drank occasionally after work.
In public?
But they didn't live with me. They would come over and visit. We would have barbecues.
Your Honor, I have a tenant...
There's nothing wrong with a parolee living there.
No, not at all.
How many people lived there?
It was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
And she didn't allow that, did she?
No,
And that's why she cursed you out.
no, that's not why.
Go ahead. What was your deal there? Were you an ideal landlord?
I believe I was. I believe I was. I'm not only responsible for the enjoyable living for her unit, but for the rest of my tenants,
Correct.
as well as the community around us.
Okay.
And it was just a nightmare.
Yeah, she didn't have much complaint about you. Tell me about the refund and how does she owe you for that?
Well, in January, my lease was up. I was on Section 8. And
January of what year?
2016.
Okay.
And I got an extension for February, the same year. And then I hadn't found a place yet. So I told her if I could pay the full month's rent and if I could stay, and she said yes. So March 5th, I mailed out the money orders of $10.50. And she's always told me as long as the money orders were postmarked by the 5th, it would be okay. So come the 9th, she comes over with the police and she's yelling at me. And I showed her my receipts and she said, that doesn't prove nothing. You're nothing but a liar. How do I know you mailed them out? And I'm like, why would I lie to you? This is where I need to live. I have nowhere else to live. And she's like, kept insisting I had another apartment. I said, I'm in the process of renting an apartment, but it wasn't final yet. So then I just told her, okay, she had an $800 deposit. She asked me to move my stuff out. By that day, the cops told us we had to leave at 3 o'clock. She made a promise in front of the police officers that if she received the money orders, that she would return the money orders, because I told her I need that money to find another place to live.
You did move out on March 9th?
I did move out on March 9th.
And that's because the police came?
Yes.
The police said give her her money back if she
Yes.
moves?
Yes.
If she moves all her things out?
Yes.
And she didn't give it back?
Yes.
Defendant Maricela Delgado rented an apartment to the plaintiff, and she claims the plaintiff violated her lease by moving criminals and parolees into the unit.
Let me hear from you.
Your Honor, we made a verbal agreement that she would pay March's rent in full because she no longer had Section 8 assistance
Yeah.
by the 3rd. I kept calling every couple of days. I have not received your rent, Elda. I have not received your rent. On the 10th, I believe it was, I went down to the unit. I was knocking on her door, and one of my tenants came out. So he tells me that she moved across the street. So I had heard people in the unit. Now, if Elda moved, there shouldn't be anybody in that unit. So I started knocking on the door, and then I said, who's in the unit? And he said, her sons, her grandkids. I think like the other day, the son just moved a girlfriend in, and I was like, oh, absolutely not. She's not gonna leave me squatters. So I started knocking on the door. I called the police. When they heard me calling the police, they ran out the side patio door, and I looked because I heard commotion that way. I looked, and there they were running down, you know what I mean, the walkway. And then the police arrived, and Elda arrived minutes after the police arrived. I told the police what was happening. She denied to the police that she had moved across the street.
She said she showed you evidence that
She showed me money order stubs.
Yeah.
Those money order stubs could have been made out to anyone.
Were they for the amount that it cost for rent?
One was like for $500. The other one was, I don't know, maybe $500 also.
And the
or
rent was how much?
$1,050.
Well, that's what it was for.
Okay.
Yeah.
I've been doing this a long time, and you'd be surprised some of the things that
All
people
right.
try to
well,
pull.
If you've been doing
So-
it a long time, you should know that you have to have a court order to
Yes.
evict someone.
I wasn't evicting her. I
Yeah.
called the police because I believed that there were people in the unit who didn't legally have
But
authorization
she presented
to be
you
there.
evidence that she had paid her rent or intended to within those next few days, and if it wasn't an emergency situation that created a danger or a hazard to anyone, then you have to go to court. Now, unless you have evidence that there was a danger or a hazard, then you illegally evicted her. Do you have such evidence?
No, I served her a
Okay.
3-day notice.
But that was
But
void.
the court has to
Right,
rule
I
it.
understand that,
Right, well, I'm
but
glad you
I
do.
didn't-
Unless you have evidence. You illegally evicted her, ma'am. And as such, I'm going to grant her treble damages for an
Your
illegal
Honor.
eviction. 3 times 1,050 is what?
Thank you. Thank
That's
you,
some
Your
treble
Honor.
damage. You can't illegally evict and
I-
throw people out on the street. What's that?
3150.
3150 is
Thank
your
you, Your
judgment.
Honor.
Have a good day.
Thank you. I just want you to know, Marcella, you can't treat people like we don't know our rights.
Elda,
No.
you are the
No, you're not gonna do
epitome-
this to me again.
The epitome
No.
of someone who
No.
abuses the system.
No, you are.
And you know it.
You are, Maricela. You lost. That's all it needs to be said. God bless you.
God bless you too.